I'm Vineet Punjabi, the head of business, and today I will be joined by Tejas, who's from our product management team, and will be walking us through most of the enhancements around the Bold platform. Before we go ahead and start, I do want to drop a note of thanks, to the entire audience over here, all our publishing partners whose continuous support and feedback has been instrumental in shaping the products to where they are today and how we are shaping them in the near future. I would like to start by saying, 2024 has been a very fulfilling year for Quintype. We started the year off with opening a regional office presence in the United States with an office in New York, followed by an acquisition of a social media listening platform called Listen First Media. Also along the year, the portfolio of services around Quintype has expanded around web performance and engineering, DevOps consulting, and of course web design and development, custom web design and development. That's been quite the forte of our group. But that being said, along the way, we're also grateful for the support of newer publishers who've joined the bandwagon. So a quick sneak peek into newer audiences that will be joining us around our products. And we've arranged a series of these webinars over the next 3 weeks that are going to give us a glance into some of the most recent developments that we've had across these product lines. I'm very confident that the next 40 minutes or so will be very informative and encourage you to adopt these enhancements because they will have, how can I say, a direct impact on your day-to-day working environment. It allows you to be more efficient. It allows you to tell more compelling stories, as well as enjoy the process of creation. Quick housekeeping details before we get started. We will be doing a lot of the showcasing across a live demo environment. So I will encourage everyone to put their screens in a full screen view mode. At the same time, please keep the questions coming on the chat window. We will be taking up these questions as and when we run through those topics through the course of these enhancements. There's also some time baked towards the end of the session to get into some more questions, but we'd like to keep the questions rather generic, focusing a larger group. If they happen to be more specific in nature, please don't worry about it because our team will be getting in touch with you with a direct communication via email or a one-on-one follow-up conversation with your success manager or your account manager. So with that said, I'm now going to kick it over to Tejas to talk a little bit around the enhancements around the new CMS, and also allow him to walk us through in these upgrades. Over to you, Tejas.
Hey Vineet, hello everyone. Thank you for taking time out to join the webinar today. So as mentioned by Vineet, we'll be going through all the product updates that we rolled out in Bold over the past year. At a very high level, the features that we rolled out were mainly targeted towards making the newsroom more efficient, content more discoverable, and making engagement with your readers more easier than ever. In order to really highlight the use cases behind the development of these features and to highlight the pain points that we're trying to address here, I'll try to take up real life scenarios that could be happening in the newsroom and how each of these features come into the picture and help the pain points faced there. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. I hope it's visible to everyone. Vineet, can you just confirm this?
Tejas, can you just stop and do it one more time? I think I had my screen shared.
All right, no issues. Good now?
Yes, we are good.
All right. So, taking the recent real life scenario, picture that the finance minister is announcing the annual budget to the nation. in a breaking news situation like this, newsrooms are always in a hurry to be the first ones to come out with the latest news. It is assumed that you might be having a live blog running, which would highlight all the major announcements that are made. Parallelly, your editors would also be working on stories which cover the individual updates in detail. So it becomes paramount to be the first ones to come out with the information. In a situation like this, where the news keeps evolving and you're expected to come out with new updates uh, and build on top of the existing news as well, what you can do is take an existing story which already covers most of the content that you're about to post, and just make use of the clone feature that was recently introduced in order to take the content that you want, make the changes to it, and use it as your own story. So as you'll see here, I've just cloned a story. I'll add my own spin to it. Like, I'll just use a random sentence here. Hmm. I'll also make use of Sage AI to generate a summary for my article, which would ideally take me a lot of time if I were to do it manually. What you'll notice now, if you've been with us for quite some time, is that while generating any story field using Sage AI, it will give you multiple suggestions for the same story field. This was done keeping in mind the fact that AI is supposed to act as an assistant to the editor in the end. While you're using Sage, uh, we wanted to give you more suggestions and also give you the ability to regenerate the content for you if you want, in order to ensure that the voice of your newsroom is taken into consideration and you can go ahead with the suggestion that suits your needs the most. Uh, Similar to the summary, I can also go ahead and fill up the metadata keywords, meta headline, meta description for my article, which would generally take me a lot of time again if I were to do all this manually, just to add the SEO juice to my article.
So great. What you're saying is that um, the Sage AI module or the AI wand per se will offer at least a couple suggestions, and if they're not suitable, depending on different tonality, you're able to regenerate, say, the headline, text, summary, or metadata around the stories.
Correct, Vineet.
Quick question over here, since we're talking about it, Tejas. How different, you started with cloning the story in the beginning, an existing story that's perhaps already been published or has not been published was made to a clone. How different would it be from updating an existing story? Because the CMS does allow you to do that.
So when you're updating an existing story, Beneath, you will essentially be republishing the same story. What we've seen in case of syndicated stories and other publisher stories as well is that the initial copy itself is retained for audit or archival purposes, and some of our publishers prefer to take a existing copy and build on top of it and publish it as a separate copy. So if you were to do it manually with the uh, functionalities that were existing before this, you would have the option to import a card from another existing story. But if there was a requirement to just uh, copy the entire story, it would take you multiple steps. So keeping that in mind, cloning the entire story makes sense here. It will also another use case that we've seen with publishers is that with respect to wired copies, they prefer keeping the wired copy unedited and unpublished in their CMS and use it as a reference for themselves and keep it for archival purposes. So in a case like this, a publisher can simply just clone the wired copy that comes in and use it use it for their own use it as its own story.
Makes a lot of sense. And, as you do go about, completing the story right here, I'm just going to branch out into a related question. Sage AI, as we all know, is an additional module that sits on top of the board CMS. And essentially, how can I say, in terms of larger newsrooms, there is a token consumption associated with how many times you regenerate a headline or you're able to fill out, the metadata around your story. Is there a way to restrict the usage of AI, at a publisher level, at a user level?
This is a very relevant question, and this is not just relevant with respect to the token consumption that takes place. What we've also observed is that publishers prefer to, keep the control of Sage AI in the hands of editors who've been vetted to use it. So, keeping this requirement in mind, we've introduced permissions at a role level, which would basically, if you just go to the roles section of the CMS, you can control who gets to use Sage AI at a permission level with the use of the Sage Story Translate and Sage Story Generate permission. What this would imply is that only users with roles who have this permission can make use of Sage AI. I believe that covers the questions. Vineet.
They just don't mean to derail you, but please keep going.
Sure. So now that the content of my story is ready, I'll go ahead and upload a relevant image to it from my system. Uh, one thing that our publishers who've been with us for a while would notice now is that while uploading any image to Bolt from your computer, you'll notice that you'll be allowed to update the file name for it. This was done keeping in mind certain requirements. What we observed with images that are uploaded from the system is that oftentimes they are just random alphanumeric values which don't really make sense with respect to the image.
Hmm.
In order to enhance, what Google recommends for image URLs is that it needs to be concise and describe the image content to an extent. So in order to cover all these use cases, we allow publishers to edit the file name of the images they are uploading. So I'll just rename this file name to something relevant. I'll also add the relevant caption to it. What you'll also now notice now is that while uploading the image to Bolt, you'll also be able to specify the alt text for this image. Now, why is alt text necessary, and how can it help you? So, with respect to accessibility standards, etc., alt text is used by screen reader apps in order for people who are visually challenged to read out the images while they are going through an article. It also acts as a placeholder in case the image fails to load on some devices. Additionally, Google recommends alt text and also uses it while ranking images. So you, as a publisher, you would want to publish add up alt text to your image, which describes it to the T. Uh, these are the use cases for adding alt text to your images in general. If there are any further questions on it, we can take it post the chat. But once you've added the alt text, I'll just go ahead and add this image to my story. Uh, what you'll also notice with respect to image URLs is that earlier the image URLs used to have a pattern of public like www.publishername.com slash followed by a 32-digit alphanumeric sequence. We've gone ahead and reduced that to 8 digits, keeping in mind uh, SEO considerations, which basically mean that your image URLs need to be short and concise. So all these updates, the alt text update, the file name update, and the image URL shortening update basically were intended to enhance the SEO of the images themselves. Now that my story is almost ready, I'll just go ahead and publish and then distribute to the necessary mediums. Now, if you're a publisher,
I'm sorry to butt in, Tejas, but while you're on the topic of images, I understand that we're doing all text now around images, which was not happening earlier. For the interest of the larger group, we're also able to rename the file, which could come, from any sort of source and typically has irrelevant information in it. And it further enhances the image URLs that will now be more SEO friendly. Now, just one quick question around that front was, would it be appropriate to say that the images were sub-optimized or not SEO friendly before the alt text and changing of image URLs has happened? Or would you suggest? How are we managing alt text before this
So,
launch?
so the update that Bold has brought out with respect to alt text is that now you are able to specify alt text for your images within within Bold itself. What used to happen before this was the alt text was configured on the front ends. The alt text was configured to be the same as the caption of the image in most cases, which doesn't affect the SEO negatively. But ideally, you'd want to keep the caption relevant to the context of the story and for the alt text to describe the image itself.
I'm just going to pick one more question that I see popping up in the chat window is really around, should the authors be using keywords in alt text?
Uh, that would really depend upon the use case. What we've seen some publishers do is they would just describe the image as it is. It would ideally, I would also need to do some research on it, but ideally, but in most cases that I've seen, the alt text is a description of the image itself.
And if left blank, it will default to the image caption to be used as the alt text.
That completely depends on the front end you're using.
Vineet, can I answer that question?
Yes, Adi, please go ahead.
So the keywords can be used when you're giving a caption for the image. So Vishwas's question: should we include keywords in the alt text? No, include the keywords in your caption. Like Tejas called out, the image alt text is primarily to describe what the image is. So imagine that there's a person who cannot see, and the page is being described to them. They can read everything else, and an audio reader can read out everything else on the page. But if it comes to the image, the audio reader should be able to tell them what the image is about. That's one of the things that image alt text would be used for, alternative text. Now the thing is, SEO gives it value. So if you're calling out what the context of that image is in that particular article, then it adds SEO value. But keywords, just taking high-ranking keywords or relevant keywords of the story and putting it in the alt text may not really be of much value.
Understood. Thank you very much for the explanation, Aditya. For the audience here, Aditya is our head of customer success, and if you've not already spoken with him before, that's a quick introduction. But without spending too much time on images, I do believe there's a lot more to showcase here. So Tejas, I'll let you drive the rest of it.
Yes, sure. So now, building on top of this example itself, if you're a publisher who's posting content with is relevant to finance or business in general, you'll most probably having a lot of customer engagement on LinkedIn. This would probably mean that you might have been manually posting your articles to LinkedIn as well. In order to automate this workflow within the story publishing itself, we've added support for auto posting your articles to LinkedIn as well, which is in addition to the support we already provided to auto post your articles to Facebook and Twitter as well. What you can do, you can basically add the social share message, or let Sage AI generate the social share message for you, and you can send the story as a post to your LinkedIn page while you're publishing the story itself.
So the story is auto-posted on the website, mobile app, social media, all concurrently at the same time.
This is particularly with respect to LinkedIn itself. Once you publish the story, it will automatically get published to your mobile apps if that is an option you're availing.
Sure.
Great. So now that we're done with the story, typically when you're covering a large event like a budget, chances are that you most likely have a section within your CMS that is dedicated to it. What we've seen with publishers when the budget comes around is that they'll create a section itself and then try to drive users towards it in order to ensure that they are staying on top of the updates. So once you've created that section, you'll also want to ensure that readers are beginning to engage with it. So in such a situation, it becomes necessary to be able to drive users to the landing pages to your landing pages of your website. So let's assume here that I have created a section called budget in my CMS, and there would be a collection created for it automatically. In order to ensure that it is the first thing that readers see when they land on my website, I'll go ahead and map it to the home page. But the home page of your website is typically something that you won't touch. Is typically something that you will just configure and leave it that way for a while. So when you're making breaking changes to your homepage, like introducing a new section to it, there must be some anxiety within you, and you'll want to ensure that the aesthetic look and feel of my website is still maintained. In order to address this pain point, what we've introduced with collection preview is the ability for a user to basically preview changes made to any listing page, which means section pages, or your home page before publishing the changes itself. So I'll just demo you how it will go. What you will do is you'll take search for the budget collection here. You will map it to the top of your home page, and before publishing the changes, just to ensure that everything is sorted, I'll just go ahead and preview my home page. What you'll see is that the budget comes on top. I'll ensure that the article I want is at the primary position. What you'll get initially is a preview of the home page in mobile view. You can also preview your web page or home page in the web preview and ensure that everything is fine. Once you ensure that, you'll just go ahead and publish the changes that you want.
Great, that's a fantastic one, Tejas, because I think so far there's been a lot of emphasis around article previews and how the article would shape up on a mobile view or a desktop view. That's essentially been extended towards all the category pages, listing pages, or even home pages,
Correct.
where changes can be previewed before you publish them live.
Correct. Additionally, now that my section page and my home page is ready, I need to ensure that I'm drawing visitors to it. In such a situation, what publishers would usually think of is push notifications. Before we did this change, push notifications were limited to story pages. What this means is that from Bolt, you could only push your story pages. What we've additionally done is we've added support for custom URLs within push notifications. So now while creating a push notification, you can choose the link to custom URL option and add any custom URL for your push notification. For instance, in this case, since I want to draw visitors to my homepage, which covers the budget in detail, I'll add that as the custom URL and go ahead and publish the push notification. Another small enhancement that you'll notice in this listing page is that the status of every push notification is visible in the listing page itself. So what you'll now see on the push notification listing page is the platforms to which your push notification was sent and the status, whether it was a success or whether it failed. This will basically help you to ensure that all the push notifications are going through. If there is a failure, you can act on it immediately and maybe attempt to publish it again or reach out to the relevant teams in order to mitigate the situation itself. So to summarize, these were broadly the enhancements that we brought out in Bolt, which would help a publisher or an editor while in the entire story creation workflow and engaging with their users. Another update with respect to story creation is pertaining to the visual story template. So what we observed is visual stories in general is a story template which gains a lot of traction among viewers. It provides a very immersive experience to readers and is generally recommended by Google as well. If you look at the best practices for visual stories recommended by Google, you'll notice that visual stories should be video first and then supplemented by text and images. We took note of this recommendation, and particularly for visual stories, we've introduced the ability to upload small video clips of up to 60 MB in size in the MP3 format directly from your system itself. I have a visual story which contains the video element.
Meanwhile, I've just shared a link with best practices around visual stories.
Yeah,
Tejas, it
please
does
go ahead.
happen to be an
I think
area
that
of
will help.
interest.
I think that will really help uh, the viewers here. All right. So these were broadly the updates pertaining to story creation and story distribution itself. Another set of updates that we rolled out are relevant to productivity itself. So typically, for larger publishers who have syndicated copies coming in, they may have 3, 4 syndication pipelines configured, and each of these pipelines might be bringing out 100 or 50 to 80 stories every day. Oh, and what we've noticed is publishers mostly end up using maybe 20 of these stories and end up publishing them. The rest of the 80 stories, they just keep piling up over time. And what you'll notice after a period of time is that the CMS would have more unpublished copies compared to the published ones.
It's a cluttered workspace. It's harder
Yes,
to
correct.
search. A very real day-to-day
Yes.
problem.
So in order to ease this, in order to make the workspace more efficient and organized, we've introduced housekeeping for stories. What housekeeping for stories essentially does is a publisher can basically let Quintype know, like, hey, I have stories coming in from Reuters. I maybe touch 10 or 20 of them on a daily basis. So any story which is older than a month and has not been updated for more than 30 days, just delete it from the system. Uh, Similar rules can be set for other pipelines as well, so that in general, the workspace just remains clean. On similar lines, what we've also noticed is that publishers have felt the need to use the latest images in their CMS or and in turn their stories. So in order to address that as well, image archival was introduced as a feature, which basically allows publishers to specify a timeline post which syndicated images from a particular source can be moved to the archive. What this means is that any image which is maybe more than 30 days old will be moved to the archive and won't be available for further use. Uh, if that image itself has been used in any published story, it remains unaffected. But it won't be available for further use, which basically helps publishers to always use the latest images that come into the CMS.
So what we understand for the larger group over here is if you do have, should I say, different regulations or content sharing guidelines with news wires or syndicated content around how often you could use that content, is there an expiry date for that content? Are you able to clean up your workspace with unused stories or unused images, that are to be utilized within a certain time frame? These are separate rules that can be triggered across different syndication pipelines.
Correct. Correct, Meet. You're absolutely right. So we can also, so if any of our publishers are interested in implementing housekeeping for stories or images in their CMS, they can just reach out to us and we'll enable it on the fly.
Great. I also notice a couple more things. As we are day-to-day users, there's 2 or 3 timestamps that come up under the workspace alongside with each story. Could you just help us quickly glance through those?
Yes, so this timestamps were introduced keeping in mind that one story may not just be published once. As a senior editor you'd want to know, like, is my team publishing stories on time? You'd want to ensure that updates are going on time. So in order to help with a general audit of all the stories without having to go inside every story or check on the front end when the story was published, we've just provided the first published and last published timestamp of the stories on the workspace itself. The timestamp with the globe identifies this time when the story was first published, and the timestamp with the tick mark basically shows you when the story was last published.
And the first one, is that when the story was created?
The first one is when the story was last updated. So it basically takes into account any edits that were made to the story. Great. So another feature that I'd like to highlight to all our users is the workspace slider. So workspace slider is basically a productivity tool for all our editors. Uh, if there's a use case where you'd want to be on top of all the updates happening in the CMS, that's where workspace slider comes into the picture. What you can how does it help? Vineet, can you just go ahead and publish a story for me in the budget section?
Well, I've just published a story. I don't know if it will be on budget, but I can do that right away.
So what you'll notice here is that once the slider was opened, I've received a notification that there are new updates to the CMS itself. So I'll just click here to see what the new update is. Great. So it's a story regarding Chat GPT. Uh, let's assume I'm a senior editor who's working on push notifications and just sorting out the collections in my CMS. Once I see that a new story has been published, I can make use of the create push notification button here, which will directly fill up the headline, which will directly fill up the push notification story fields for me. And then I can just go ahead and publish this push notification as well. So all in all, what Workspace Slider does is it helps you stay updated with all the stories getting published and created in the CMS on a real-time basis, so that if any actionable item is there, the editors can get right to it without having to, go back to the workspace every time and disrupt their workflow itself.
Awesome. It's how can I say, for larger newsrooms where there are hundreds of stories being published on a day-to-day basis, even though or while the publisher is maneuvering through different sections or curating the content or organizing the homepage, it's a great way to keep your finger on the pulse with what stories are being created or what stories are being published while you're going through those activities.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, Vineet.
Since
That
we did mention larger newsrooms, and I'm going to take a couple seconds here, Tejas. Something that has also come up very frequently is really larger newsrooms that happen to have a multilingual editorial teams, and multilingual editorial teams might be using a primary language, but then a lot of the personalization around the workspace and how it orients is something that has come up as quite a relevant use case.
Correct. So this is a scenario we observed with multiple publishers. There can be multiple cases where maybe the website and the editorial itself functions in a vernacular language, but the management is more comfortable with English, which basically means the editorial team would like to interact with the Bolt's user interface in their vernacular language, and for the managerial team, they would prefer to interact with Bolt in English. What this essentially means that every user in Bolt should have the ability to interact with it in the language they want. In order to facilitate that, we've introduced a user level toggle, which will essentially allow a user to select the Bolt language for themselves. Right now, we have support for 4 languages, which is English, Hindi, Arabic, and Finnish. We are open to add more languages as well. I hope that covers it.
Yes, thank you very much, Tejas.
Yes. Speaking of larger publishers or enterprise publishers, so to speak, what we observed with these publishers in general is that the authentication and the identification and authentication is something that they prefer to keep at a single point of contact. It happens usually because enterprise publishers may have a lot of SaaS applications in their arsenal, and they want to control who gets access to what at a singular place itself. So in order to cover that use case, we've integrated Entra login with Bold itself. And what this essentially means is that the control of who logs into Bolt and when to revoke access to Bolt can be controlled from your MS Entra portal itself. We feel this could be a great addition to help our enterprise publishers who are making use of it already, and just add Bolt to this suite of applications that it supports.
Awesome. So in a nutshell, yes, it is quite possible to disable all other forms of login and only keep the Active Directory or MS Entra, Microsoft Entra login as a source of entry for larger newsrooms that are working off a centralized sort of access ecosystem.
So currently, you can if you want to, if Entra is enabled for you, you can enable all other social logins like Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But we still kept the form login open so that so people from our support team can just log into the CMS in order to debug anything that that needs to be debugged at any point of time. But apart from that, other social logins can be disabled at your will.
Okay, great. I guess then, Tejas, we'll move towards the elephant in the room. I think, a large part of the enhancement is really also what we're doing with print. While you did showcase the initial part, I do notice two prompts. One is just cloning the story, what you started with, and the other one goes around cloning for print.
Correct. So it really is the elephant in the room. So I'll just go ahead and address it. What clone to print basically means is that, assuming you're a publisher who is active on print as well, you can edit the content you want. You from your digital workspace, you can choose. Sorry. Uh,
No, keep going. It's okay.
all right. So from the digital workspace itself, you can pick and choose the stories which you want to send to your print system from Bolt. In order to do this, you'll have to get in touch with us to enable the print feature. Once that is done, you will be able to clone any story in your digital workspace for the purpose of print. Once you've cloned any story for print, you'll notice that it is cloned as it is with the print template. The story remains as it is. Now, once the story is cloned, I can either remove the components from the story that are not exactly print friendly, like this link to a story and this iframe. This is not something a print system would expect. So you can either remove it from the workspace, from the print story itself, or this can be done by the system that sits between Bold and the uh, downstream print system. So once you made all the changes that are required, you can essentially just print the story, which will send it to your downstream print system. What you'll notice here is that compared to the digital workspace, the print workspace has lesser swim lanes, because once a story has been decided to get printed, all you'll basically be doing is make some minor edits to it, which mainly include removing the components which are not necessarily required for print. Additionally, if you go back to the digital workspace, you'll notice an icon next to all the digital stories which have been cloned to print. What this basically helps with is for publishers to know that the story has been cloned to print, and they can avoid duplicating the action and just avoid redundant work in general. You'll also notice a similar icon for the clone action. Any story which has been cloned will have an indicator on top of it to sort of let the publisher know that this particular story has been cloned. How it helps is, if let's say a story has been already cloned, in order to avoid redundant work, you can like rely on this indicator to maybe work on another story instead.
Sure. Also quite useful in case of wired stories, as you explained earlier, which might start off, keeping the original version intact. And if there are multiple people trying to work on the same topic, it does give them an indication of sorts that the story is already being cloned, which means that there's someone from the editorial team who's already picked it up.
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. Very interesting use cases over here, Tejas. Just to summarize it for the broader group, the print integrations are more bespoke in nature. So we'd have to understand what the current setup is, what the downstream print system is, and how we're able to facilitate these integrations. Very quickly, moving back to last couple points, and I guess we still have room for a couple more questions, so we'll take those up, Tejas.
Sure.
Great. So that was a interesting overview of what we've been able to cover thus far. This was primarily around the Bold CMS and a little bit around how bespoke integrations would happen with downstream print systems, whether or not that requires an adapter or middleware of some sorts is something that's up for discussion. But had some successful use cases where there's been implementation across our network. Okay, with that, I guess we do come towards the end of the webinar. We do have room for a couple of questions if they happen to show up on the chat window. I'm gonna just stop my sharing and see if we have a few questions that we can take up, Tejas.
Sure. No questions so
Yeah,
far.
looks like we're all good over here. So I guess that pretty much brings us towards the end of our session. I would like to wrap up just with a quick reminder on our next webinar that is slated for coming Thursday. This will primarily be around updates that have happened around the subscription management or the paywall module, as very popularly known around access type, which will be covered by our colleagues Shraddha and Anirudh from our product management team. So we look forward to seeing everyone same time next Thursday on 13th of Feb. Please do note you will also get a small survey after the end of today's webinar, just asking for open feedback, any questions you might have, and that will enable us to have our success managers and our account management team get in touch with you, take it up as one-on-one discussions to help you make full use of these enhancements and future additions to the CMS. With that, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you.